Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
We're down here in the Town Hall Lower Theater. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we need to approve the minutes of Tuesday, September 14th, 2021.
I'll move approval.
Great. Second, please. Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
I would request that we do an executive session this evening before we discuss the lawsuit settlement, so we can share some additional detail with the board.
Okay. So when are you proposing we do that?
That we
Sooner than later or at the
No,
end?
I would suggest we do it at the end.
At the end.
So
Okay.
we'll do it after item 4. We'll take a brief recess. We'll come back.
And come back. Okay.
Yes.
So at
And then-
item 4, we'll do it there.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Let me see. Make sure I've got that. All right. Moving on. Any public comment? Is there anybody there? Okay. All right. Hearing none. Move on to the manager's report.
Share some information with the board from a previous meeting with the trustees. Paul Noble from the listers had shared a pretty extensive report on Rockingham residential housing, and I'll give you copies. So it was distributed at that meeting, and thought it was valuable information for the village as well. You can see that Paul has taken a 3-year period, and looked at a variety of different indicators that show the health and some of the concerns with our residential housing, our multifamily housing, and some trends, as well as he's done some survey work. When people do sell houses, he actually goes through a pretty extensive questionnaire to get impact or feedback from folks about just basic sort of questions that give more color to why people had moved to the community, so that it sort of gives a broader perspective on our market, maybe people who might be coming here, and maybe who we might be looking to target as we go forward. So shared it with the trustees. It was a good document. Thought it was important to also share it with the select board and share it with the trustees, just to give us a snapshot of where things are. Very localized, obviously, for just Rockingham and Bellows Falls, so it doesn't project out regionally. So every community has a little different profile, but I thought it was good information and something I thought that might be useful to the board. So wanted to get that and distribute that for your attention. The other item that the last time we met, we discussed, you wanted some feedback and follow up on our pursuit policy. Just as a brief history, we had referred some of the documentation to our VLCT liaison, our public safety person. They reviewed it. They felt that they were somewhat compromised because they also provide us our liability insurance. So they did give me a contact at the Legal Liability Risk Management Institute, which is a big jargon, LLRMI. So I did speak to some people there. They're independent of our insurance and coverages, and they felt that they might be able to give us a more independent view of our policy, this particular incident, and then any updates or any other information that might benefit us as we look at changes or other concerns that we might have. So they have the documentation. We're going to set up a follow-up discussion with one of their principals. He was not available prior to this meeting, so I'm hoping to have it sometime in the next 2 weeks so we could have it at one of our October meetings. So just want to give you feedback on that. We are possibly looking at, we're close. So on our coefficient of dispersion, I think if you're over 20%, then you are mandated by Vermont state law to do a reassessment. The last feedback we got from the state was we were at 16.5%. So we're under, but we're getting close to the point where that might be a concern. So we'll get another update from them in December, and then we'll have a better indication if we need to do something prior to town meeting. Oh.
Artificial inflation of housing sales makes people wary that their taxes are going to go up while they just sit there and have done nothing to their property because of other sales in the area. So.
I think reappraisals are one of the more painful things we can undertake for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
I'm very hopeful that we're not going to go over that number.
Yeah. Sorry, I left turned it off because I was rustling papers and I didn't want to make a lot of noise. So, thank you. All right. Then we move on to the agenda to the first item, which is to update on the Westminster District number 5.
So I apologize. We were communicating with our attorney, and he was tied up with some litigation, and he had tried to get a written memorandum for your meeting tonight. He could not make it in person. He had some other commitments. So I will try to get him at our next meeting with an updated written analysis of some of the issues in the current agreement. There's a couple of routes we can go. Obviously, we weren't going to be able to resolve this prior to the October billing, so we weren't under a tremendous amount of stress. But there is some things that we want to resolve prior to the March billing, and he thinks that we can do that without major modifications. His read of the current agreement does seem to indicate that we can pursue our collection policy, and how we're going to do that might be part of the conversation we might want to have with Westminster. I have spoken to, well, I've left messages, did not speak to the treasurer, but I did speak to the president of the District 5, and he left me a voicemail after a period of time and just simply said that they still were short and were not able to complete the obligation. They were going to try to have it completed before we bill again. But beyond that, didn't really give me any new information or any information that I could pass on to you as to a concern or a particular problem that we could try to fix. So I think when we have this legal review, the next thing we'll try to do is invite them to come to a meeting and have a more detailed conversation as to why we are where we are. And then I think you'll have some outlines of what options you might want to pursue, but I think we should at least give them the opportunity to come and present to you directly prior to us taking, more aggressive action. So
okay,
at this point,
you think the next one or the last meeting in October?
Well, I'd like to have Ray come to our next meeting and then invite the folks from the district to come to the second meeting in October, and then have some sort of action on for our November meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that'll keep us well within our time schedule to have something in place prior to the next billing cycle. So if that's okay with everyone, I think we'll pursue it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else, board, on this item? Okay, we're going to talk about it next month. All right. Review sludge removal options.
No, once you get into sludge, you can't get out. So it seems like
you're sinking.
Well, it's, our friends at Casella have sent along a proposal, and I just wanted to discuss it with the board tonight. We're in no rush to make any judgment on this. Again, I think this is a later in October decision we have to make. We still have 2 meetings to go over whether or not we want to purchase. Our extension on the current program with our dryer goes to the end of October. So I think that's the deadline that I think we all decided needed to sort of fix a decision. This came recently, and I just want to go through some of the numbers with you just so that you can understand what they are. We had asked Casella, meaning Rob Wheeler and myself, that as a backup to our current system. If we ever had a problem and needed some sort of backup, just give us a proposal for costs. So what we would have to do, hauling of wet sludge to a facility. So they came back with that, and that portion of their proposal is under the emergency backup service. And what that basically is container service. The second line item, which is the T&B, is a grasslands facility. So that's in northern New York, and that is a recycling facility. So what they do is they take wet sludge to that facility, they mix it with lime, and then they basically then create a Class A biosolid, which they can then spread. And that's only available in New York. It's not permitted in Vermont.
Permitted. Yeah.
So that would not be the same Class A biosolid permit that we were currently pursuing in Vermont and New Hampshire. Just wanted to make that clear. The second proposal is their traditional haul to Coventry upstate, wet sludge dispose of in the landfill. So based on a 3-year contract, and so they built in rates, and then we have a 13-ton minimum, which is close to what we produce annually. It fluctuates slightly up and down from that number, but that's a pretty fair number to work with. They came up with their cost of the regular service, and you can see their proposal there for both the Grasslands facility and the upstate Coventry Vermont facility. Those are both wet sludge applications. The dryer annual cost was something he did on his own. It's not accurate, so it was really just for he did that.
This is from Casella.
This is from Casella, so those numbers aren't the real numbers, but he just wanted to throw it out there for comparative purposes. The emergency backup is a real number, and the regular service. So the top portion of this proposal is real. Anything from the I can never pronounce it. Shinshi. Don't say that fast. Something awful is going to come out of my mouth. Shinshi dryer below is just their estimate. So those comparisons aren't accurate. So Rob and I will work up some numbers.
That'll be more realistic.
That'll be more along the lines of 2 options, right?
Right.
The option that we discussed back when we did the site visit was refurbishing the existing machine and continuing with our lease agreement, or buying a new machine outright, and there was a number attached to both of those. I had given you copies of those proposals,
right,
from just for your own purposes. So we're going to work within that framework. The goal is to have something for you to look at. It's your first meeting in October. Have the board ask questions, ask for additional analysis, request whatever other information you would like, and then have an action item on for the second meeting in October so we can make a decision. So this really is here tonight just to sort of get you started and bring you up to speed on some of the activity that's been going on since we did the walkthrough back in, what was that, July? I don't even remember when we did that. June? I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah,
Scott, these numbers from Casella. Now the place in Newport with the where wet sludge can go, that's Casella, isn't it?
well, we can't haul to Newport. We can only haul to Coventry. We can only haul
Okay.
upstate in Vermont. We're
Okay.
no longer authorized to cross over and go to Newport.
Okay, so it's Coventry.
It's
I'm
only
sorry.
Coventry.
Okay.
But that's Casella, right?
Both are Casella.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So now this pricing includes trucking.
Yes. It does include his
And
trucking.
who
cost.
does the trucking? They do the trucking?
They sub the trucking
Sub it
out.
out, yeah.
They
Okay.
do.
They do.
Casella.
What I've noticed though is what happens is they come back to you with all sorts of additional transportation cost riders. So if gasoline increases or if other
Right, of
costs
course.
increase, you get these CPI plus transportation surcharge kind of costs.
Yep.
So these are really baseline numbers.
Right.
You can play with a range of 10 to 20% depending upon how gas goes, and other aspects of trucking are not going down. Things are getting much more expensive. So you can imagine we can add to this number.
Right. The other thing about this that I think is important, are two things really. One was when we had the demonstration down at the plant, they mentioned that the name that you're having trouble pronouncing.
The S word.
Yeah. That they have developed or are developing a stainless steel
Right.
model.
Yes.
And I think we all, based largely on Rob's experience with dealing with this sludge, it would appear that to go with the dryer, it almost seems to me like we ought to be analyzing it based on the stainless steel.
Right. Because you're
unit.
going to get a longer life expectancy out of the
It's
unit.
going to be, I would it's inevitable that it would be a longer life.
Right.
Yes. So we'll make sure that's the number that we're looking at,
That we're,
Is
that
the
we're going to do
stainless-
for
stainless
comparative
steel number.
purposes.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's the smarter investment. If we're going to make the investment in a purchase, that does make more sense long term.
the other thing is that with the ARPA funds, I know those funds are earmarked for the town and the village. They're not earmarked for the utilities.
Well, there is separate monies outside of the town and village allocations that are specific to water and wastewater projects.
Okay.
And they're
of
in
course-
that interim guidance, which runs 130 pages from the Treasury Department, because that makes it easier
Yeah.
for our jurisdictions to, work with the federal government. So we're working through that to see if there is some ability for us to use ARPA specific to the wastewater and water funds to be able to do that.
Okay. And of course,
So
the
we'll have to get
infrastructure,
that.
the infrastructure bill that's being debated in Congress now would presumably have some allocation for water and sewer. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
it just seems to me that where particularly in the People's Republic of Vermont, that with the concern over the ecology and the planet and all of that stuff, which is important, that this dryer just seems to be so environmentally appropriate.
yeah, I was
that-
not aware of this other option for this New York facility. That one was news to me.
Yeah.
So, and it is a reuse application, so it's not just burying in a landfill. They're actually, mixing it and then being able to reapply it. So it does have some.
So it does
benefit,
have some, yeah.
but
Yeah, but they must have, I would think I want to put it a ceiling on how much waste they can take in
well,
New
I
York.
did ask that question because, again, if you make a 3-year commitment, you don't want to know in year 2 that we've capped out.
They
and
capped out, we can't do it
this
anymore. Yeah.
Right. And so those are some of the things that I think we'll have to vet more
Yeah.
carefully.
Right.
So it is always a concern.
Yeah.
It just seems like the dryer from many respects, but we've got to pay attention to the economics, particularly when we look at the debt schedule for the sewer plant.
Right.
And
Well, I wanted to bring this to your attention tonight because I had not been aware of this other option for
Mhm.
disposal. I wanted to make sure the board had seen
no,
it
we
long
should-
before we sit and
Yeah.
talk about, making major purchase and capital decisions.
Right.
So
And of course, we already know there's a possibility that at some point the Coventry facility might close.
there's always capacity questions and concerns there. And
Well,
I think
those are
they're
things to look
constrained.
at.
I don't think they
Yeah.
can expand. I think there's been lawsuits and there's been all sorts of other environmental regulation, and I believe they're pretty much landlocked. I don't think they can go
Expand.
outside of their current footprint, and I
Mhm.
don't know how long they've estimated that's going to last.
Right. So what I'm asking is if we're doing pricing that way, we should spread it out, what it looks like over the next, not just next year, but over a 2 or 3 year
Yeah,
plan.
3 years is not a real long-term view for
Mhm.
waste, for solid waste disposal,
No.
that's for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All set, Jeff? All right, so that moves us on to item number 3, which is the finance update.
So we did present, and you've got a copy of a spreadsheet in your packet that is, we've gone through now, worked with the bond bank, we worked with USDA, we worked with the auditors. We did get updates to all of our outstanding loans, as well as some resolution to that question of the negative interest and that whole process of how things are going to be booked for our balance sheet, because there was a lot of there was difficulty in trying to get a real number, and I think there was some frustration from the board as just how much debt had we issued and how much do we actually owe. And I think what happened was the bond bank has refunded all of the negative interest bonds and then created new bonds based on reduced principal and interest. So you'll see, if you look at our total, well, I wanted to show you just a couple of things, because you'll notice right away that you're going to see some substantial changes based on losing that negative interest. So in the water fund specifically, you'll see that there was $1,370,000 worth of negative interest that was refunded. And so that was then applied back to your principal balance. So you see that your bonds payable balance went from roughly $7,849,000 to $6,479,000. So that's where that significant change occurred, because of that refunding and then posting that back now to a traditional bond and a traditional payment. On the sewer side, we are still chasing the $988,000 on the good news front. I got a email this afternoon from the attorney from the bond bank. We have a closing date on the $988,000 bond. So that means that we will be getting our payment from USDA. So we'll be able to clear up our due from, and they're issuing those bonds at a 1.75% interest rate. Originally it had been forecasted 2.75%. So you'll see a little bit of savings in our debt schedule when that issue is sold. So that will eliminate the last sort of piece of the unknown, and it'll give me a full set of principal and interest, so that you'll start to see, as we're developing the 22, 23, and 24 schedules, I'll fill that out. The issue for the 988 is scheduled to close, I believe, October 20th. So I don't know if we'll make it in time to get it on for your second meeting. I don't think we'll have enough time based on when that refunding, because I think we meet the 26th. And I just don't know if they'll have everything done and to us with schedules for, so that I can put it back in so you guys can see the bottom line net numbers. So that's what I'm shooting for, but you can at least see what that impact is going to be. On the
good news is it'll help the balance sheet.
Yes,
the bad news is that the debt service on that 988 isn't plugged in to the 2022, 23, and 24 schedule. So So what's currently $705,000 a year in debt service, principal and interest, is going to go up by some factor.
Yes.
So
And then the flip side is we'll also see a $988,000 infusion into our, back into our fund. So there'll be some offset there. And then also you'll see a net impact too on your total bond debt for sewer. Currently, when we started in the 6/30/20 balance, if you look, it was roughly 18,050,000. And again, based on some of these changes, and we had some bonds that we actually were able to get rid of. So there's some deletions there. So you'll see a couple of about $285,000 in deletions and some other changes. Our total bond debt went down to about $16,446,000.
Yeah, because on the debt portion of this spreadsheet, the 988 is in there.
Correct.
It's just not in on the payments.
And it shows up as a principal balance. It just doesn't show up yet as as we go forward how we're going to pay. So I guess the bottom line here is by the time that this debt is issued in the marketplace in October, we'll have a new schedule. I'll be able to plug this all in, and then I can run it out for you so you can see how we go forward with the payments, principal and interest, and then we can then go back to our discussion about where we stand with the two funds and how we look as we go forward with our rates and whether or not we're in a good position, whether or not we're in a bad position, do we need to do some other things, and how that might impact our discussions about other capital projects. So we are on the threshold, at least, of being able to do some things that we could not do previously.
Mm.
And I feel pretty confident that once we get that, I think the numbers that we're working with are, and again, we've run these back through the auditor, so these are not, these are pretty solid numbers. So,
What, the point that I was trying to make, earlier before we did our rates, is it's a dramatic difference looking ahead as to the debt service from the water fund and the sewer fund.
yes.
I mean,
By
it's like,
substantial amounts.
it's, 200, after the first year, which is 182,000, it's 270,000 versus 705, and that doesn't include the 988 debt service. So it's
Right.
a huge difference, and I think that I was questioning whether we needed to raise the water rates because obviously their cash position is pretty robust versus the sewer fund, and their debt service going forward is actually dropping. I guess they got most of the benefit of this interest.
The negative interest
Negative
bonds, they
interest.
were definitely the biggest
the water, yeah.
beneficiary of. And I think that just as a quick analysis, I agree with you, Jiggs. I think that we're in a much stronger position in the water fund. Obviously, we have less debt overall, but also I think when you start looking at our ratios, we're much healthier. So I think that'll influence our rate conversations. Sewer is a little bit more complicated because we also have, third-party agreements that are not factored in, which are part of this whole conversation.
Right, yeah.
We have monies from North Walpole and other sewer districts, and so that does offset some of this debt. So while it seems large and maybe somewhat intimidating, there are pieces of this that are also paid through third parties. So the overall impact, I think, is something we're going to have to dig into and make the board more comfortable before we have another discussion about March and rates and capital budget. So, but I wanted to bring this to you because I thought at least this was the best snapshot of where we are. And once that 988 is completed, I think we have everything ready for real analysis and presentation and further board whatever other types of work we want to do on these two funds. It certainly gives us a good base to start with.
Thank you. That's good. That's good to have that.
Anyone else have any questions for Scott?
The only other thing that I did put in that packet of information is, if you remember, we did do a general fund balance sort of memo back when we did the budget. And I doubt you remember. We did it back in March, and you get buried in paper and you guys sort of get overwhelmed during that process. But what I did want to do is just update for you where we stand with a 5-year look. So you can see that, starting in fiscal year 17, and this is only general fund. So now we're out of the water sewer discussions.
Mm-hmm.
We're only talking about village general fund here. We were in a difficult spot in 2017 with only $79,000 of unencumbered fund balance, which is well below where we needed to be in terms of where the auditors and where the rating agencies want to see you. So the good news is I think the board was aggressive and made decisions to try and correct that and make the fund or make our fund balance more robust. And we've done that over the last 5 fiscal years. So you can see that currently we're at roughly $622,000 at the end of the 21 fiscal year. Now, that's not an audited number, but it's pretty close to what it's going to be. So that's a substantial improvement over that 5-year period. Based on that, I've made some recommendations. We're going to talk about a couple of items, and one of them is on this evening's agenda, and that's a settlement of litigation conversation that might require payment of fund balance. But the other 2 items are items that are going to be coming to you for conversation. One of them is coming at the joint meeting tomorrow, as we're talking about nuisance property and a potential demolition contract. And then another would be our police server, which we've talked about a couple of times here at this table. We at least have a solution at this point that we need to pursue. We have portions of that 2012 server are failing and can't be backed up. And we're at a point that if it fails catastrophically, I'd have to go out and basically we'd have to reestablish all of the police. So that's all of the dispatch, all of the state reporting, all of the other crime and information that they do. All of that would be lost if that server fails. And right now I can't get it to back up, so I couldn't restore it. So we're at a critical juncture where we have to make a decision on spending that money potentially as well. But the 2 items that I think will be more directly involved are the conversation about litigation and the conversation about property demolition. I just wanted to bring those to your attention, that if we have to do fund balance appropriation, we're still in a very positive position, since they were not budgeted costs, that these would be something we'd have to do out of fund balance if the board so chooses. So
You put recommended motions on here.
the only one that we'll have to do again is one that we're doing later on, is item number 5.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is for tomorrow evening, and the other one is for another point in October. But I just wanted to bring them to your attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if there's any other questions or considerations, I'd be more than happy to get you more information. So when we're ready to.
Well, I could ask you the question, are you going out to bid for the server?
Well, we would have to go through our existing contractor only from the standpoint of they have to take the old one offline, and they've got all of the firewalls set up, they've got all of the security set up, and then they would have to reestablish it. Mm-hmm. So it would be very cost prohibitive to have a new vendor come in and have to redo all of that on top of establishing all the other functional items on the hardware.
I'm just
So
concerned that in the long term, we might not be happy with. I mean, it's a very sensitive system. It's not for the police. It's not the same as some other things that we do in the municipal area, but for policing and the types of processes that they have, I'm just concerned. And of course, I was just on a podcast call this afternoon about modernization of police reporting, and they talked about in large cities, and they were some states that haven't changed over to NIBRDs, and they have to get that completed, and so they were talking about bidding it out, bringing in people to show them and demonstrate the programs to make sure that they were going to be there for you, they were going to take care of everything, and they weren't going to walk away. And speaking of the contract that will be expiring in a bit, that's a concern.
Yeah, I don't. Our contract, we have to make a decision. I believe it was a 3-year contract. I think it expires at the end of 21. I'm not sure we're at a point where we can wait to that point to try to bring in a new vendor. We're already at risk. It's just a question of when if we have a catastrophic failure and we lose one of these arrays and this server, we won't be able to restore it. And at that point, we're literally out of operation. We're back to writing things down on paper and not being able to access the national crime information databases and all the Vermont databases. It gets to become a huge operational problem. So that's why I was bringing it to your attention. So this is outside of our camera discussions and our other video evidence discussion. We're going to be able to segment that data when we do this, and that'll stay on a separate server, and we'll manage that data separately, and we'll work on that over time. So,
I think the ARPA funds are depending on what the guidelines are
Possibility.
a possibility.
We're going to take
there.
a look at that and
I
see.
think
Right.
the other thing is we should be able to get some verification of the number. Okay, in other words, that we're like Deb mentioned, if a new vendor came in, would it be $12,000? I mean, we just need to have some assurance that that we're not getting taken to the cleaners on this thing.
Okay.
And I don't know how you do that, but I think
Yeah.
it's important that we
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, because this says up to 25.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, the chief and I have had 2 or 3 meetings on different options, and then we brought you up to speed on a couple of them that we talked about.
Mhm.
And the first few were 45 and 50,000, and were just not going to work for us in terms of what we needed and how much we thought we could realistically spend. So now we're down to one server, segmenting the other server with just the video data, and then it's down to a $25,000 number. So I think that's more reasonable. I think that's something we can handle. But I can see if I can get somebody to try to give me a like quote. It won't probably be exact because, again, they don't have all the same. They'll have to reset all the firewalls, all the data networks, do all that. So there might be additional cost just because of those things.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I'll try to see what I can do to at least give you a comparative number.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
But by the way, the auditor a few years ago basically came up, particularly when we were down at the 79,000.
And lower previous years.
The auditor, they have kind of a guideline for municipalities, and that
Yes.
they want your fund balance to be somewhere around 20% of your budget.
Yep.
Okay, so if our budget is in the $1.6 million range, that's 320,000
Right.
is the kind of number we don't want to go below or whatever. And of course, I'm delighted to see it up higher, but I do think
Right.
the point that Scott is making here is that we have a little flexibility here to do things, particularly do things before we are in trouble or whatever. So
Well, I hate doing things as an emergency because we
Yeah.
all know that once you do it in that
So it's
respect,
going to be more
it's
expensive.
tremendously more costly. Right.
Okay, so the first line expenditure motion, we'll be making it after our executive sessions. That's what we
Yes.
anticipate. Okay, if that
The other
becomes
two
the
are
case.
more just for your consideration, and
Right.
For
one
another meeting.
specifically we're going to talk about tomorrow in the joint meeting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything further from the board? Questions on these items? Okay. All right, that moves us on to discussion of the marijuana opt-in and legislation, which I think will also be on this joint board, won't it?
Yes, there's also some additional information on the joint board. I just gave you just some basic information that came from the VLCT summary of the activity that took place this year. So there is a couple of things that are different from when the original legislation was passed. There is now they have the Cannabis Control Board, and there's an advisory committee as well with that. There's a process now for opt-ins, and they gave us additional times, meaning other communities, additional time if they wanted to opt in. I think previously they told everybody they wanted them to make a decision by 21. Now I think they've extended it to 22. So you have additional time for that. A couple things on here that I thought were interesting that the board might be curious about is there is a portion of this once they enact. So if a community decides there's additional money that this Cannabis Business Development Fund can then help assist businesses, and they're looking to try to help communities that have, and this is their language, not mine, that historically have been disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. So I'm not quite sure
I'm not sure what that means.
what that means, but I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. So I think they'll develop that as we go on. But there's also going to be additional required training because the state can't pass legislation without unfunded mandates. So as you can see, under highway safety, we're going to have, all of our police officers are going to have to receive 16 hours of advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement training.
Yep.
I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming that there'll be a module that will be developed and it'll be some sort of a standard testing or standard educational module, and our officers will have to take it along with all the other modules that they have to do. Is
Currently no test to see if someone is incapacitated due to marijuana.
yeah, so I'm not quite sure how or what is going to be part of that, but I just thought it was interesting and was something that I thought maybe the board might be interested in as this moves forward. So with that being said, there is still additional conversation, and I do have more information to talk about for tomorrow night. The VLCT had sent out a survey to communities, and I think Deb has a copy from the most recent.
Yes.
And actually, it didn't come from them. I'm wrong. It came from the Cannabis Control
Right,
Board.
it came to, yeah.
And they were just asking for basic information. It was not anything that obligated you toward any type of action. I just think they wanted to get a
Just a feel, yeah.
feedback from, how things are. So I think the town was looking at just turning one in. I think Peter was going to turn one in. I think Deb had.
He and I have been batting it back and forth.
Right.
So should we do this, is what Peter's saying, so we just do one with input from both.
Right.
That sort of thing.
So, and again, the only thing that does is just provide feedback. It's not meant to obligate either town or village in any sense of, okay, we're going to take some future action based on this response. There, it's just simply, I guess, to feed the control board information. So that might be a point of conversation you might be hearing more about as we go forward.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? We're going to be talking about it again tomorrow night. At the joint board. Okay, that would take us down to needing to go into an executive session for, where are we? I believe it's still the pending or probable civil litigation one. So I need someone to we need to make two motions. Would
Yes.
you be interested? It's the number 11.
Number 11?
Yeah, we have to do it twice. And then we will be coming back out, making some form of decision.
All right, I make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss pending or probable civil litigation or a prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party, and invite the municipal manager.
Right. Need a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And then you need to read the second one, down at the bottom. Down at the bottom of the card where you were,
Okay,
there's two motions, the second one you need to do too.
okay, I move that we go into executive session because the issue involves confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body, 1 VSA 313A1, and invite the municipal manager to attend.
Give me a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're going now into executive
Great.
session. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Thank you for your patience for those who hung on. We're back in session and I have a resolution to read. I'm going to do that now and then we'll do the other motion. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Bellows Falls. The undersigned, being the members of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Bellows Falls, a municipal corporation duly created and validly existing under and pursuant to the laws of the state of Vermont, hereby resolve as follows. Resolved, that the village authorizes and ratifies the settlement of a claim by Alicia Beam in the matter Beam v. Bellows Falls, Vermont Village Corp. And Lake, civil action number 220 CV 46. I'm not sure what D stands for in Vermont. Pursuant to the proposed settlement agreement and general release, the settlement. Resolved, that the village admits no liability, and in fact, the village denies liability and enters into the settlement for the sole purpose of avoiding protracted litigation. Resolved, that the village hereby authorizes municipal manager Scott Pickup to execute on behalf of the village any and all necessary and incidental documents required in connection with the above described settlement, subject to any non-substantive changes. Resolved that pursuant to the proposed settlement, the village authorizes the payment of funds by the village to Alicia Beam in compensation for lost wages, and further authorizes the payment of settlement funds by VLCT Passive Inc. pursuant to the settlement executed by Alicia Beam, subject to payment by the village of the village's deductible. In witness whereof, the undersigned have executed this resolution on the dates set forth below. Do we need second to that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Oh, okay, okay. All right, so Wade Mashur,
Aye.
Jakes McAuliffe,
Aye.
Deborah Wright, aye. Jeff Dunbar.
Aye.
All right, we are resolved. And I will now date this one and pass it along. And sign it. Pass it to Jeff first, then we'll go backwards. And then we have, of course, have another motion to make for the appropriation of the funds for our budget. If someone else would like to make that motion.
I'll make it. I'll make the motion to move to approve expenditures of up to $47,500 for the village's portion of a settlement of litigation.
Need a second?
I'll
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All right, we're all set. Oh. Okay, please include that from the unencumbered fund balance. All right, then. You're welcome. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We are resolved. Okay. Is there anything further? We need to finish up the meeting. So, where are we? All right. Review agenda items for the next meeting, October 12th, 2021. We have some time for that, and we've set a few of them. If you got it, Scott.
I've also got the manager's evaluation form that we probably need to circulate and then spend some time with.
Okay.
The one that we've got, it's very long.
It is, but it's a little bit shorter than the old one, and
Is it really?
and it's a little less touchy-feely than the old one.
Okay.
So we are improving over the years.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
just giving you guys a heads up. It's a little long, but it's all good.
So you're gonna pass out copies for?
I'll send it to you guys. As
Okay,
a
that's
follow-up. Yeah.
And we have a couple of other things. We already talked about the sewer and the Shinchi / Casella.
Yes. They'll
in
be
the
back
next-
on.
in the next
Correct.
month. Okay, great.
What about financials?
Yes.
What can we expect?
Yes, I think now that we've got, we finished the RLF today, so I think the next will be the general funds for both the village and the town. So we should have both
For the last fiscal year or for
through
the?
June 30th, plus then the most
the new
recent
year to
budget
date.
status report for the
Great.
current year. So
Okay.
It'd be
yeah,
nice to
we're
see it
making
on track.
progress here.
Okay,
So
that sounds good. Agenda items for the joint board meeting tomorrow. We already know that. We already have our agendas and materials available, so we've got that. Review, we don't have any orders, bills, and warrants unless Scott forgot to bring them to us. You did, so next time. Can handle it tomorrow. Skip that one.
these settlements and I just lost track of time. So
Yeah.
my bad.
Other business. Scott, you have anything else? Okay. Wade, anything?
Just a couple things. First of all, I'd just like to once again just mention the documentary that we showed here last week. It sounds like everything went over well and fairly well attended in both showings, and heard nothing but positive things. And I guess it was a pretty good fundraiser for the park.
And tremendous job by all the folks at Fact TV and all the folks that worked on it. Really, it's outstanding. Really outstanding work.
And the other question have we sold the cruiser? What's the one that
Had a person that had bid through our auction, our online auction, and then when we came time for them to pay, they backed out. So we are
Aw.
back up for bid.
really?
So we'll
Okay.
let you know once we get a final.
So seller backed out. Anything else, Wade?
No.
Okay, thank you. Jigs.
Are you going to mention the petition? This copy of
petition?
the petition that we received?
Don't need to. We can talk about it tomorrow when we're with the
Okay.
select board.
All right.
That makes sense
okay.
to me.
Great.
Anything
Then
else?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought it should put it where it belongs, and let's see what they do with it, and we'll talk about it. Okay, a couple things. Yes, I loved Call to Duty. I thought it was great and very inspiring. I would like to see them show it a couple more times, especially since using it as a fundraiser. The trees,
Talked about doing one more showing in October before.
before the Fireman's
October
Parade.
11th parade.
Okay.
Or 10th parade, rather, the Sunday the 10th.
That'd be great,
So,
yeah.
We'll let you know.
Give other people who haven't had a chance to see it, or those who wish to see it, an opportunity to do so. The tree's up, looks great. I took a couple pictures, put them on Facebook. It's a wonderful tree. I know it's expensive, and I hope it lasts for years and years to come.
It's going to be a great centerpiece. It's going to be
Yeah.
a great park. I hope
It looks
people
great, and it's not
really
even finished
enjoy
yet. So,
Yeah.
so that part was great. Oh, last, we went past the stuff about the Shinchi dryer, but I'd forgotten to let people know I have made inquiries about the silo that's at the Bellows Falls Middle School to see. I haven't gotten an answer back yet to see what they intend
Potentially
with it.
reusable.
And
Okay.
if they'd like to move it on, that would be great and would help
Excellent.
our storage, because we were talking about that at when
That
we
would
went
be
to
good
see the
know. That would
demonstration.
be great.
So there's that. I think that's it. Yep, I think that's it. Jeff.
I'd just like to echo everyone else's praise for the documentary. It was very moving, and I was 8 years old and remember it occurring.
I feel so old.
Yeah, and Mrs. Brown was my teacher, so it's and then also the park. Been watching the progress there, and the volunteers that are putting in a lot of hours and work is really a testament to who we are as a village, and want to thank them.
Great. Well, it looks like that's it, and we have had our executive session, and I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
In a second? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And good night, and thank you.